This is a short video to explain how we take food protein and make it into body protein. Now, you know if you've been listening to the other videos that we are not what we eat, but we actually are made up of the components of food, but we're going to see how they're linked together. So we're going to first of all look at these food proteins, so that various foods, whether they're going to be from plants or animals, and we know that within those foods that there are proteins, and those proteins have very, very specific shapes. Once we eat that food, the first thing we're going to do, we're going to have to digest that protein. So we need to remember that step. And the first thing we're going to have to do after we eat this protein is it will unfold. So that three-dimensional shape of the protein will unfolded, and there's this a special name for that, and that's called denaturation. So denaturation is the unfolding of protein. Now that can happen even before we eat, but it definitely will happen in the stomach, and that's due to the acidity of the stomach. Acidity causes this. So now we've essentially lost that three-dimensional shape of the protein. We've unfolded it. It would no longer function as it originally was intended, but that's okay. We don't need the original function of the protein. We actually want the building blocks. So we've taken this unfolded protein, and the next thing we're going to do, we're going to bring it into the small intestines. And in the small intestines, we will further digest that protein to the individual amino acids, which is the end product of digestion. Now, once we have it to the amino acids, we will be able to absorb that protein. So we're going to show this as an arrow here. We're going to absorption. And now we've got that amino acids, not the original protein, but the parts of the protein are going to be absorbed, and they are water soluble, so they will hit the liver first. That would be the first organ to receive these amino acids. Now, once we have amino acids in the liver, they actually then can be dispersed, and I'm just going to show this as kind of arrows throughout the body, through the vascular system, into what we'll call, I'm going to draw it here, is just a big circle, talking about the amino acid pool. So we'll call this a pool of an amino acids. It is not a specific place in the body. I want you to think of it broader than that. But think about all these single amino acids in your body, whether it's in a blood or within a cell. If they are not linked together within a protein, we'll call them as a pool. Now, interesting enough, of all the amino acids in the body, only about 1% of all amino acids in the body are actually in this pool. In the body. So 1% of the body are loose individual amino acids in this big philosophical idea of a pool of amino acids. And it's from there that the body will actually take amino acids out to produce protein. So we're going to pull from that pool for protein production. Now, protein production is going to happen within each cell, and the book goes over that quite well. But philosophically, we know we're going to pull from that pool to produce a protein, and we do all kinds of proteins. So our muscle are made of protein. Our organs are actually protein structures. We also have blood proteins. So blood proteins, we have to form those. We have to form enzymes in every cell. On down the list, we've got to do all of those functional proteins in the body. I also want to make a note here that there is no storage depot of proteins. So we don't have like a storage depot of fat that we have, or the storage amount of glycogen that we have for carbohydrate. There is no storage depot of protein. So a protein is either functional or it is not formed. So we have protein production. Now, if we think about this again as the whole body, and we're going to talk about these are the body proteins. So we had food proteins. Now we have these body proteins. And again, these are all functional proteins. We can also break down those proteins. The body is constantly being breaking down and being rebuilt. So we're going to have the breakdown of body proteins. That's not a problem. We want to have some of that going on all the time. Probably about every tissue is a little bit different, so that the speed of which things are being broken down and built will vary depending upon the tissue. But if you break it down, you get it to the amino acids. Again, we have amino acids coming from our food, and we've got amino acids from the breakdown of body proteins, but it's all going to be in one large pool I'll emphasize again, this is only about 1% of all amino acids in the body. Most amino acids are going to be in these functional proteins. We can actually recycle some of those. If it's in that pool, we could reuse them. So we recycle about 2/3 of the amino acids will be recycled. But philosophically, it's all one big pool, and we can bring it from our food, we can bring it from broken down tissue. But what happens if we have more amino acids than what we need? We cannot force this. We cannot force the production of protein by eating more protein. Okay, so we cannot force I'm going to erase that. This protein cannot be forced. This is very, very controlled by tissues. So this is why if someone eats a bunch of protein, they can't just force it down this pathway. This whole pathway of protein production is very, very controlled. So that means that these amino acids that are not pulled over to produce proteins would remain within this amino acid pool. The next question is, how long can they be in that situation? And amino acids will be in the amino acid pool for about 12 to 18 hours. So again, there is no storage of amino acids. So we had no storage of total protein. We also have no storage of amino acid. Either the amino acids are in this blood pool and within tissues and within the blood, and either they're used for protein production or they will be processed. So we've got to do something with these extra amino acids. And I want to show you what that is. I'm going to bring up an amino acid here, bring it into our picture, and look at what's going to happen to that process. So let's just say this is an extra. We don't need it for a protein, and this would be the basic structure of all amino acids. So this is just a basic structure. And we can see that we have these two main parts. So we're going to actually do this. We're going to clip off this nitrogen. Again, this is an extra amino acid, so we're going to process it and get rid of it. And we're going to take that nitrogen, and we're going to take that off through the process called deamination. So deamination is very similar in terms of its word and its sound to denaturation, but they're very, very different processes. Denaturation is just unfolding of a protein structure, where deamination is where we take off that amine group and we're going to convert it to urea, and we're going to excrete that in the urine. And we could actually capture that and measure it if we wanted to. But we still have this other part of the amino acid that is not just going to be thrown away. We can do lots of different things with this part of the amino acid. One thing we can do is we can use it for energy production. You can actually break that apart all the way down and get all the energy that's in that molecule and use it for energy production. That gives the body about 4 calories per gram. So that's a number you already know, and now we know where that comes from. Another thing we could do with this carbon backbone, we can convert it to glucose. That may seem a little odd, but we can convert the amino acid, the building blocks of protein, to glucose in the body. And then another thing we can do, we can convert it to fat. If you eat too much chicken, eggs, beef, beans, and rice, you will not store the amino acids because we have no storage of amino acids or protein. We're going to convert it to glucose, or we're going to convert it to fat and build up body fat if we have too many calories. So we can see what's happened here. We started with food protein. We've broken it down to the amino acids, and the amino acids will go into this very large pool. And then from that pool of amino acids, we will use them to build body proteins. And again, these are always going to be within a cell. And depending on which cell you are is what you would build with that protein. But we can't force it. We cannot force it. This is very, very controlled by the tissues. And the breakdown and building up of protein is going to be hormonally controlled, all those things related to that. And we can't store the amino acids. So if we eat more protein than what we need, we are going to actually just process them, get rid of the nitrogen waste through the urea and the urine, and then we're going to use that carbon backbone for something else, such as energy. We convert it to glucose, or we convert it to fat.